Hello. Today we're doing another cooking video, today we're doing Cuban food. We're doing Cuban food. My mother is from Cuba, and I have grown up with this food, but only recently engaged in trying to make it. So today we're going to make Cuban-styled chicken, which I'll explain a little bit later why it's Cuban-styled. And then we're going to do some rice, we're going to do some Cuban black beans, which is a staple of all Cuban lunches, meals, breakfasts, everything. It's what they eat all the time, and there's good reason, it's wonderful. And then we're going to do some plantain. We're going to make some sort of tostone with the plantain, which is fried banana essentially. But plantain, I'll explain the difference between plantain and banana if you don't know later on. Yeah, hope you enjoy it.
So what are you doing here?
So I'm making the sofrito. Sofrito is a combination of things created to make a base for sauces and soups and things like that. So the Cuban sofrito, there's various ones. Italy's got its own, France has got its own. But this is green peppers, always this, green peppers, onions, cumin, garlic, fair amount of garlic, salt, pepper if you want to, and then you slowly cook that in quite a lot of oil. And what that does is it makes this kind of thick caramelised sort of thing, and it's the base for the black beans, it's the base for stews, potages, all that sort of stuff. So I'm just dicing up some onion and some peppers, really small. I'm going to get them in the pan. The sofrito is bubbling away in quite a lot of oil. In all honesty, I might even traditionally put a little more oil in that. I'm making a bit more sofrito than I need because it's quite a useful thing, and you can actually freeze it if you want to. But Cuban people will make it, and eventually it will kind of soften down almost into a kind of a sauce textured thing, and you can put them in ice trays, put them in your freezer, and then anytime you want to jazz up in a Cuban fashion, a soup or something like that, you could just plonk it in. It works really well. So there, at the minute, all I've done is I wanted the green pepper and the onions to cook through a little bit, become translucent before I then put in my mash-up. So I've mashed up some cumin and garlic and a bit of salt, which helps the flavour but also helps the crushing progress. You don't have to do it in one of these. You can do it in a blender or you can just chop it all up, but I like using it. You know, all of the ingredients are all in there and it mashes it up really nicely. So I'm going to plonk it in the dubious looking blob into my Sofrito blend.
Okay.
Stir that in. Okay, so the black beans. So we had the Sofrito in originally, that was the base. I've taken out half of that. I've put in 2 tins of organic black beans. They don't have to be organic, it's just what we found. Black beans are turtle beans. Ideally I'd be putting in dried beans. We'd be soaking them overnight and then we'd be putting those in. And the benefit of those actually is that they stay firmer. These have sat in liquid for quite a long time, but actually we're making this quite quickly and it's fine. It's still going to be really flavoursome. So we've got 2 tins of black beans. We've got the Sofrito in there as well. I think as well, I forgot to say that Sofrito had oregano. So oregano, cumin, garlic, peppers, onions. And now I'm letting that simmer away. I put in a little bit of tomato puree, which is just going to give it, you know, a slightly different sort of flavour. And we let that bubble away for quite a long time, just simmer really, really gently. I've got my trivet handy just in case it gets too bubbly. And in fact, I might even put a little bit more water in this, just so it gives it a bit of time to just simmer away without reducing too much. We'll let that go and we'll come back to it. Doing the chicken now. So the chicken's been marinating. Chicken thighs, I'd marinate them for as long as you want, really. I mean, you can do them overnight, but if you do a good strong marinade, a couple of hours will still make a big difference. It's been about a couple of hours. There's lots of flavour going on in this as well, so I don't really mind. But yeah, overnight's really good. I've taken it out of the cool. I mean, you want to sort of do it in your fridge. Because I'm about to fry it, and if it's at a nice temperature, a sort of more roomy temperature, then it will start frying better. But bear in mind the fact that there are and has been liquid on this anyway, so it's not going to fry really fry properly anyway. So I want to take some of the extraneous stuff off it, but it doesn't matter too much if it's not. I'm going to clean this board afterwards, so don't you worry about that. Use thighs without their skins or bones on. The thighs have still got quite a lot of fat in them. And sort of other adjoining stuff, so it still cooks really well even without the bone or the skins, but the bone and skin will add fat and more cartilage and things that will help flavour and also kind of help things to stay moist as they cook. But no worries, because the way that we do this, we're basically, you can add, I'm going to shove it in the oven, I could add some liquid that will help to keep it moist in the cooking process, lid on top or foil on top, and that will help keep the steam and all that sort of stuff in there. But I'm going to start by giving it some colour. So, heavy base pan, oil in that. I'm using veg oil today, it doesn't really matter too much. I just want to get it crispy. Veg oil is important. Rather than using, just don't use really good olive oil, just doesn't have the burning point that is required for frying. So, just going to wait for that for a minute, although I don't want to really sizzle it because it's going in the oven. So, not to worry. You can test it anyway. I'm just going to see. Yep, it's definitely going to fry. There's a noise. So carefully pop the chicken in there. Hopefully it's all going to fit in the pan. I shouldn't be doing this over that really. Let's go round it. Now these will shrink a little bit as well, so I'm going to cram them in. Right, so we're getting to quite a good place in terms of colour. I mean, like I said before, because there's liquid in the marinade, it's not going to fry really, really quickly. But I just want to get a bit of colour on there, and also I want to start getting the garlic and the marinade to sort of do a little bit of work on the chicken. Actually, what's a useful thing to point out is that everyone's pan works really differently, and like you might find in a lot of cases, one side of the pan cooks really quickly and the other one doesn't. So move your chicken about so it does actually start getting colour. Like this bit isn't really getting a lot of colour, and where you can see that it's really caramelising around that edge makes me feel that that's where the heat is in this pan. So I'm going to put it there. Right, so now that's had a bit of colour, I've got a preheated oven that's on quite high, and I'm going to put it in quite high, and then I'm going to reduce the temperature pretty quickly because we've already given it colour. So I'm going to say, this oven cooks quite hot, I'm going to say actually about 150 because we're going to do it for quite a while. I'm going to leave the cover off for a little while, and then as soon as it cools down a little bit, I'm going to put the lid back on because I actually want it to sort of steam at the same time as roast. Rice now, very important part of the meal. On this occasion, I'm going to do the quick method, which is boiling it in a lot of water and then draining it because it's going to suit this. I think on another video, I might actually talk about the absorption method, which is where, as it sounds, you allow the liquid to be absorbed into the product in order to make it a different way. I'm using basmati rice, even though the Cubans would traditionally use long grain, but I like basmati, we all do, so we're going to use that. So basically what I've got a big bowl, I've used 1 whole cup's worth of rice, that tends to be well enough for 2 people, and there's going to be loads of other things going on in this dish, so in this case that's what I'm doing. And I've filled this up with, put the rice in the bowl, filled it up with quite a lot of water. We're going to do that for 2, it looks murky, doesn't it? Murky. But we're going to do, it does 2 things. We're going to rinse the rice eventually of some of the starch, and we are letting it soak to soften it down a little bit so the cooking process is slower. I'll tell you why that's important later.
Okay.
Right, so it's coming together. A few things have happened and are happening. I've made this, the mojo. That's the sauce, the garlicky, citrusy sauce that might get, splashed over things. The black beans have been almost completed. I chucked in a little bit of red wine close to the end of cooking, plus some capers. Olives would be nice too. It doesn't matter if you don't do those things, but it just adds to the bite and the character of it. What I did also do is I mashed down some of it a little bit to thicken it. So rather than just let it thicken on its own by stirring, I just mashed some of the beans and it helps to thicken some of it. Now, plantain. This is a Cuban staple. I should have showed you before. Essentially looks like a big old sort of overly ripe banana. And now you can either cook it green, or you can cook it like this when it's quite ripe. And ripe produces a different experience. But what I'm going to do is sort of caramelise these bananas. So I've just cut them in half and I'm going to fry them. I'm going to fry them until they take on a really lovely sort of rich caramelised texture. And they're not banana-y. They're not quite as banana-y as bananas. They're, that's explanatory. They are. They're a bit more like potato in texture. So they can get crispy and sort of, you know, they're starchier like potato is. So cut those in half.
Smoking.
It's probably too hot, but it's all right. I can turn it down and take it off. Yeah, it's quite hot. What we will do anyway, the fact that I'm going to put loads of these in means that it's going to bring the temperature of the oil down. So that's quite hot there, isn't it? But it does need to be. 1, 2.
Okay.
You know, you get the picture. I might not have enough space for these. I'll turn that in a second.
Looks like quite a lot for the three of us.
Yeah, that'll do. We're almost about to plate up. So I cooked the rice.
Oh.
And then I popped some foil on and a lid so there was a really tight closure. I'm going to take that off. And what that did is the steam stays within it and it just helps to make it sort of a bit fluffier. That's lovely stuff. Occasionally what I do actually is I let some steam out then and I might put the lid back on again. But I want to use some of the oil from the chicken, which will be infused by the flavour of it and by all the marinades. So we're going to, some of the colour as well. I've chucked in some red pepper right at the very end. Just a bit more. Which is giving it a nice colour. So that oil in there. I seasoned, the water was slightly salted, so hopefully the rice will be reasonably seasoned, but you know, it's okay for it to not be too salty. So, this is the chicken. This is the beauty of the thigh. In as much as it's really nicely sort of like crispy on the outside, but it's still would have stayed moist on the inside because I used a lid. You can use foil, anything you want. I mean, even actually that inclusion of a little bit of red pepper means that there's moisture in the pan. I've chopped up some coriander, fresh coriander, and chuck that in like that, and just mix it about. There is just the flavour of the fresh coriander. It just, if I'd cooked that, it would have gone a bit dark green and wouldn't have had a fresh aromatic smell about it. This is just amazingly, like, just immediately releases a perfume. And then this meat is falling apart. You don't have to chop it, but I like doing that because I like infusing more of the meat with the flavour. Look at that.